So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring back Mr. Stefan Willi is joining us again, Mr. Ryan Jeffery, and we have had Mr. Zac Cronauer join us as well, and he is head of fiber initiatives for Blue Ridge. So, gentlemen, let's go ahead and kind of talk about some of the business and technical issues that you have seen in the pandemic. And Zac, since you are brand new to us, how would you say that the pandemic changed the priorities and goals that you had set?
Thank you, and thank you for having me on this. It's a great opportunity, and it's one of the things that Ryan and Stefan have talked about is supply chain. It really put a stress on fiber optic cabling in general. You saw lead times expand exponentially. So it gave you a good opportunity to be innovative. We were able to still launch a few projects, but you had to get creative in the way that you did that because of how much stress there was on the supply chain. And you saw a lot of the big fiber optic companies, really, take the brunt of that, with closures and with everything they were dealing, as we all are with the pandemic. And it gave us an opportunity to be innovative and kind of change and adapt to an ever-changing climate.
Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I noticed, the significant change in the priorities, is really that a lot of the networks, at least here in Australia, really went into an embargo state. So other than really mission critical, so things like security or bandwidth allocation shifts or things like that, no other real changes were allowed to typical BAU activities. And so the sort of change pipelines really halted. But what it also meant is a lot of really critical things had to really be forced through the typical change acceptance boards and things like that. And one of the other things that I guess I recognized too was that a lot of the teams, they shifted to work from home and they still were working away really diligently. But the changes that they were doing, the BAU type activities, were really just backing up. And once the embargoes finally lifted, there was just this huge backlog, a wave of changes that were waiting to all of those systems and processes that normally just sort of trickle through day by day, week by week. There was just huge change there around the change of change.
Yeah, just the impact of the amount of change. Ryan, I'm curious, what were your thoughts really on some of the work from home and some of the pressure that put on, on the telecom industry when everything automatically, I mean, it certainly was a way that we were going, but it really went overnight.
Yeah, and I think that's true. So I guess I've noticed that as a trend where people might work one day a week from home. So to an extent, it's maybe eased that people have started setting up for the ability to work from home. But yeah, and almost overnight, at least here, the lockdown was really quick and really all-encompassing here in Australia. So we went from people working in the offices one week to the next week. It was suddenly everybody was working from home. We were locked down quite tightly. And yeah, obviously a lot of people who hadn't been even doing the 1 or 2 days a week working from home just weren't necessarily set up for it. And yeah, I really pity the people who were, say, in an apartment with teenage kids, for example, trying to work from home and school from home, and everybody sort of in each other's laps trying to do that. Where I guess I'm lucky enough, I've got the separate office. So, but yeah, a really big change on some of my colleagues, their ability to work from home. Structurally, I think from a network perspective, it was fine, and from a technology perspective, but probably less so from almost the social perspective. But definitely, as I mentioned earlier on about the customer care people, it had a really big impact in places like India and Philippines, where the networks maybe didn't support the same level of being able to do customer care remotely as they did from their like contact center spaces, which had been set up with high-speed internet, with all of the computers set up, with all of the voice type capabilities that just weren't existing when people returned to work from home in some of those other places.
Right. Yeah, I don't know who I felt more sorry for, people at home with small children or teenage children. I'm not sure which was worse. Stefan, let's go over to you and talk about two-part question for you. What do you think we could have done to prepare better for this pandemic? If we could have, now that we know there could, possibly this is in our realm of possibility going forward, but also what would you say are the biggest learnings out of it?
I think there were a lot of negative points of this pandemic, but one of the positive points was it was kind of an accelerator for the digital transformation, especially in our company. And I think it's in all of the company all over the planet. We had to learn how to work from home, and this was kind of, it's not just technical thing how laptop works. That there was anything ready, because we've been working with team over 2 years now. That actually we were from day one productive, but it was kind of, how do I treat my social contacts? How do I do meeting with people I've never seen before? Face to face is something different. I think that's one of the learnings we did. How could we prepare better? Yeah, I mean, we talked about supply chain. There was a bottleneck in IT equipment, definitively. I mean, if you wanted to order headsets or digital cameras or whatever, you were lucky to get a bunch of kind of 100 cameras or something like this. Being better prepared means make sure you have the equipment in case of you really have to roll out kind of this home working stuff in terms of a pandemic. Now we have the kind of the after pandemic work, which we have to do now. It's not over yet, but I mean, the first two waves have gone here, at least in Switzerland. We faced another challenge. The chip market was completely broken down, and today the end user equipment has delivery time of 12 to 15 months. Basically means we have to set up now a clear capacity management on how we buy all those devices, being ready for a third or a fourth wave for a next pandemic, and that's another challenge. So as Zac said, the supply chain, I think that's the core of this pandemic. This is really one of the most important things, supply chain.
So, Stefan, do you see much changing with the supply chain? I know the companies that I work with here in the U.S., we've talked a lot about kind of hedging our bets and not having everything come out of Asia, still continuing to get supplies where we've gotten them, but maybe balancing it a little bit more. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, has there been much thought about diversifying the supply chain, or what to do about it?
Just to make it short, you have to build your own stock. It's on how do you say, on demand production today. Nobody has a lot of things, a lot of cameras or whatever on stock. So you have to build your own stocks. I mean, I think that's the essential thing. Even if it costs money, you need to make sure you can provide your users and you can provide your customers with equipment. I don't think with the on-time production, I don't think it will help to trust any other measure.
Great. Zac, same question to you. I mean, what have been your biggest learnings out of this pandemic, and what are you going to do differently to prepare going forward and prepare for just like we were in 2020? We have no idea what's going to happen.
Yes, preparing is probably the biggest thing. To Ryan's point, now everybody has the opportunity. We've worked from home. We kind of understand how these processes work. So getting that plan in place, that we are able to adapt and overcome as these situations arise now. One of the biggest things I think we've learned is how much we need to kind of rely on ourselves as a cable MSO and make sure that we are taking care of our processes and procedures and not really being, pushing that ball down the road. The supply chain and what really killed us, and maybe not using as proprietary information or equipment as possible, diversifying that to more of an industry standard, whether it's in fiber or networking solutions, so that it can be more open and where we're not solely dependent on one vendor or one manufacturer, because then we were placed into a corner where we had to, you have to adapt then, because you were so proprietary and it's so specialized and you couldn't get it. And then your customers were the ones that were going to be bearing the brunt of it because they're at home. We're, as a company, you're worried about, getting your employees set up, whereas your customers are dependent on your services and making sure that kids can be, learning, and your customers can be working as well, so that we can all continue to make it and survive this pandemic together.
Ryan, I really saw you shaking your head when we were talking about supply chains. What do you see, or what are you doing in Australia, if it's different as it relates to supply chains?
Yeah, I think also it's probably not my greatest field of specialization. It's certainly one of the things that I'm finding that the stores here are probably failing to get stock, as the guys had mentioned as well. And apparently a lot of the ships that would normally be able, so we've kind of exited lockdown, so we've got very, very few cases, if any, in any given day across Australia at the moment. So most things are opening up. So the ports and all of the other infrastructure is really opening up. But I think a lot of the ships are actually just locked down off the coast of Europe and America. So we're actually struggling to get a lot of things over to here. And again, and we're equally dependent on Asia for a lot of production for a lot of our things as well. But I guess the really interesting thing for me out of it has been, having done some business continuity planning for customers in the past, is the pandemic never really came onto my radar as such for that continuity planning. And you think about all these other potential black swan events, but the pandemic has been different from all those things that you think of, like the fact that we now have to run the network from outside where we would normally run the network. And that to me has almost been the biggest eye-opener for me about how I would do things differently, and looking at business continuity planning with a sort of different lens on what those black swan events can be.
I think the black swan events really make business continuity planning all the more important, because I know that I have found the organizations that I worked with that at least were in some form of continuity planning, at least had some level of crisis management strategy, fared much better in this pandemic than those that don't. At least they were thinking about change and talking about things that could happen. But Stefan, the one thing I think that we have gotten out of this is wow, internet usage has gone off the chart. I mean, I think in the last year, all the things that we were talking about the future of the internet, whether it be, telehealth, or whether it be, working from home, it's all gone on steroids. The amount that was able to transition to the internet and transition as quickly. So where do you see the biggest opportunities going forward? And I guess what, if any, what things do you predict will still stay online? Will schools stay online? Will we transition more to health online? That was a big question, and get ready, Ryan and Zac, because I'm coming your way with the same question. You're just lucky you get time to think about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of online services are going to stay, and we will see time by time which service will die again. But I think health, for me, it's a personal thing. I think I like to go to the doctor. I get a more reliable answer when I really meet someone personally. Schooling, I'm pretty sure the digital transformation did a good job here, and I'm pretty sure we can use those portals more and more in the future. I personally start a new master degree tomorrow, by the way. and it's going to be remote as well. Home working, as mentioned already, as Ryan mentioned, I think in our company, we already talked about it. Today, it's 100% home working of 90% of the people in our employees in our company. But we talked about making about 1 or 2 days per week. Because, you know, in Switzerland, the public transportation is very popular, and the capacities get close to their limit over the last years. We are a 9 million country on a small place, and this will help to really release a little bit the pain in the public transportation. I think home office is going to be kind of a 20% thing, which will stay, and schooling. Anything else? I like to go into shops and buying things there, just take it in my hands and see if this is the right quality. That's hard to get it over an online shop. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of online shopping, definitively, but I think a lot of things will go back because of social contact, and you need that. I need it personally as well. I have a very nice new at the moment because it's snowing outside, but still, I would prefer to see my colleagues.
Yeah, it's you know, it's interesting. I've heard a couple of people say we're going to have a boomerang effect. Like maybe we'll immediately, once everything opens, we'll all run out and want to be with one another, and then we'll kind of figure out that maybe on a snow day I do want to stay home. So things will
Virtual beer is tough.
Yeah, yeah. But I do agree with you. I think at the end of the day, we are social creatures, and there's going to be you know, there's going to be a need you know, a need to get back together. But Zac, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, I echo a lot of his, you know, sentiments. I think the bandwidth boom, you know, I don't think is going anywhere. I think, you know, you're going to see capacity management being, you know, one of the keys, you know, to the future, is understanding, you know, how much people are going to need. You know, in America, it's the push for rural. You know, everything's great if you're living in the city and you have multiple options and your bandwidth's great. But if you are in rural America, you know, you don't have that option. You know, you don't have a good internet to your house. You don't have fiber to your house. You're going to be in a different position than a lot of other people. And I think, you know, that's going to be the biggest push, is to get rural, you know, areas the type of service that everybody needs and requires to be successful, especially economically. Without, you know, before it was utilities, and now it's almost, if you don't have bandwidth and broadband, you can't have economic growth. So I think that's going to be the biggest key, is making sure that everybody has this type of service so that we can all survive together.
Ryan?
Yeah, well, actually, just to loop back on one of Stefan's points earlier on as well. So talking about the homeschooling and whether it's going to cause a shift. So a few of my friends are teachers, and they found that quite a profound effect, that some kids who really, really struggled in the schooling environment have really thrived outside. So working from home, they've really thrived and gone from sort of bottom of the class to doing exceedingly brilliant assignments and so forth. And yet others work the other way. So I think what the real social experiment that's been thrust upon us has given all sorts of different threads, and digital threads, the ability to do things more in a more introverted way in some ways, but also in an extroverted way, and to try things that have been different. And I think that's where a lot of the opportunities will really stem from, as it has been a big social experiment. We've tried all these new things that we wouldn't have tried otherwise. And that's the reason why I feel like the next generation of Zoom, so I guess we're seeing it with Clubhouse and other things like that, are just going to pop up. And it's potentially that great opportunity for the new growth, like the little sprout coming out of the burnt deadwood. But yeah, I think we're going to have that potential to change because we've tried all sorts of interesting things, and I think it will be underpinned by digital technologies and the networks that we look after.
Yeah, I think I've been fascinated with Clubhouse and the fact that it's gone audio. And then I heard this morning that Zoom has come out with a new, I don't know if you call it an update or whatever, where you can act like you're having bad sound, or you'll hear your dog barking in the background, so you have a reason to get off your Zoom call, or at least to lose your, or at least to lose your video. So it's going to be interesting to see the inventions going forward. So Stefan, I would ask a question, and that is, everything we hear is that the internet is the infrastructure of the future. It's the roads. I mean, kind of like Zac talked about, if you're in a rural community right now, it used to be if you didn't have the railroad or you didn't have a highway, your town would cease to exist. And it's basically where we are right now with internet. And the pandemic has really taken that to another level. So what do you see happening with the future of internet as as infrastructure, and what communities and or companies need to be doing in order to strengthen their opportunities around that?
Who should answer? Me? Or?
Yes, Stefan. Sorry. Yes.
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry about that. No. My fault.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, fiber. That's a keyword. We have 50,000 homes passed today on the cable TV network. By the way, we have to guarantee in all rural regions in Switzerland at least 200 megabit service. Standard in our network is 1 gig, is the max what you can get over the CAT TV network. But there will be a transition anyway. Even if the DOCSIS network is still strong, we have to plan the transition to fiber. Because we already talk about ultra high definition TV services, which will tremendously increase the bandwidth use. As you need about 20-25 megabit per channel. And today on our TV platform, we offer about 270 TV channels. I mean, if you have a calculator, you will immediately see that that's kind of a very huge bandwidth coming up. Not all are on UHD today, but this will come over the years. Quality of service is something we really have to struggle with also in the access network. We just deployed software-defined access network, which is very interesting, fiber network, where you have really a very, very high quality of service level. This really helps to guarantee the streaming services like voice and TV to make them work at every time. I think fiber is the keyword, fiber, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. You have to invest a lot of money. It's expensive. I mean, 1 meter in Switzerland, 1 meter cable underground is about $2,500. We're not big, but still a lot of money.
Yeah. Zac, weigh in on that as well. What do you see as far as infrastructure and the future of what organizations, communities, political leaders need to be doing around the internet and fiber, as Stefan said?
Yes. No, it was a great point. Fiber is the future. You can't handle the amount of bandwidth, in your standard HFC cable plan. To his point, DOCSIS 3.1 has been able to mitigate a lot of that, but you're still going to hit node splits, and you're going to still deal with high capacity users. Fiber is the only way forward. You can get your regular G or E PON, or you can scale it up to XGS, and you're going to see next gen PON coming up very soon. If not being deployed, I think some people in America are as well. But to our political leaders and the people that are running municipal cable plants or ISPs, is making sure that you're providing the best service to your customer, and with RDOF and CARES and all of this, is holding the people that you're giving this funding to accountable for your service. 50 meg doesn't get you as far as it once did. Whether it's the standard of 200 or a gig, we have to make sure that we're providing the customers with enough bandwidth to survive. And to your point, fiber is expensive. It's more specialized. The amount of workers you're going to need to either train or go through. It's much different, but you know, it's evolving. It's getting easier, whether it's pre-connectorization, you know, it's different types of platforms that you're able to do now to help mitigate that, you know, where you're not having to train as much, where you can kind of help out your technicians evolve with your cable plan.
All right, we are just about at the end of this panel, but I want to leave you all with a challenging question. I want to do a set of rounds of saying, if we'd all been sitting here in 2019, I don't think we could have imagined that we'd all be sitting here in our homes right now, doing a panel that is seen around the world, and that this has pretty much become norm and become commonplace. So what do you see if you take us out in the next 3 to 5 years? What do you see the biggest growth points for the internet? And what, if anything, you know, do you see on the horizon that may surprise us? Ryan, we'll kick off with you.
Yeah, so I guess it's already a trend that's well underway, but I feel like industry will be even more data-driven than previous. So I think as the economies of scale of IoT and things like that make it more feasible, but also how we can run analytics and insight generation out of that data, that I think there's going to be a lot more endpoints that are basically sensor type endpoints that will drive a lot more traffic into the edge, into the network, and really probably change the way that businesses run and become less on gut feel and more on real-time data-driven insight generation.
Right, data is definitely going to become more and more important. Stefan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. From my perspective, there are 2 other services which are coming up over the next years tremendously. That's OTT services. That's something which has grown tremendously during this pandemic. We measured this, and in our network, there was a increase of about 30% of the OTT service over 1 year. And cloud services. I mean, everyone is working with the known providers like Google, like Microsoft Office. More and more it's really going towards the cloud, even data-driven things. I mean, and backups, and I think it's those 2 challenges which we have in the future. And with those services, it's latency. We're talking about latency, and therefore we need fiber. Even if there's a low latency DOCSIS 3.1, which is coming up soon, but we need fiber.
All roads lead to fiber, don't they?
We have.
It's sounding like a cereal commercial.
Right, it's like real estate, location, location, location. All right, Zac, bring us home.
Yeah, so it's music to my ears. No, I think fiber to the home, and then, you know, coupled with security. I think eventually, you know, as we are you know, away from one another and decentralized, I think network security is going to be enormous, and you know, in cloud, you know, but everything, you know, is making sure that if we are processing and doing things remotely, I think, you know, fiber to the home and network security are going to come hand in hand.
Yeah, cybersecurity is a big issue. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you joining us today for this panel. It's been a robust discussion, both about the exciting things that have happened in the last year, as well as what's coming in the future. So I think we're going to take about a 1-minute yoga stretch here, or whatever you want to do with your 1 minute. And join us back when our host, NMS Prime, going to do a great presentation. So we'll see you in a minute.
Thanks, Meredith. Great
Yeah.
question.
Thank you.